let's have a little chat about your assignments. One of the things that many of you struggled with was using a sustainability framework. Those of you who did, those of you who didn't. And so I'd like to go through a really quick and simple example of the stakeholder framework and why it's so crucial that we think about it as a sustainability framework. So here's a report from The Times from Friday, January 26, 2018. No, not the one about 50 Cent, even though he gets money, and that's also what we're talking about, but about ASOS. I think that many of you would be customers of ASOS. And I want to look at one thing very specific. We talk about critical discourse analysis and looking at the content of media and words and what's being said and not just what's being quote unquote said. So I looked at one word, growth. How is growth defined? Because remember, in the stakeholder analysis, multiple stakeholders are addressed. And so growth would have multiple meanings. So I would like to look at what growth means in this article about ASOS. It's doing well, better than expected, better than they'd expected last year. And so just looking at this one word, here's how they've defined growth. Market valuation, retail sales, number of customers, pre-tax profit, revenue, share prices, investment, and expanding. And oh, by the way, retail sales are up 30% over the same quarter last year. And so the implicit values here, if we're thinking about in terms of the underlying values under the iceberg, as it were, is that growth equals financial growth. And only and ever means financial growth. This is in the business section, and it's crucial to mark that because we're talking about business here. And so if business is defining growth and the health of a business as money, an expansion of money, there are a couple of questions we need to ask. Well, the first one is, what would the stakeholder analysis ask us to ask? Who's addressed by this? Not the consumers, not the workers, and it's page after page. These are addressed to the shareholders and their profits. And so there is no accountability to any other stakeholder. And as we know from looking at fast fashion, we can recognize that ASOS is one of the trendsetters in fast fashion. In fact, they even mention it. They say that harnessing social media to capture the millennial market and its desire for fast-changing fashion. So ASOS is really beating other shops because they don't, remember, they're an online shop. They don't have a bricks and mortars. They don't have a shop that you can walk into and say, hey, I want this outfit. And so their new app revolutionizes your ability to do just that. You can try on something and send it back and only pay for what you keep. So they're getting better and better at serving customers. The Amazon way will give you what you want, how you want it. And they get ever better at doing that, except we don't question, is the single-minded focus on growth what we want to do for business? And so we're asking ourselves, what about the others along the supply chain? Now, we could be talking about any other market. I just picked fast fashion because it's recent. We could be talking about this industry, diamonds. They do the exact same thing. As you can see, this woman seems to be looking at something that's wondrous and beautiful. And all of the words that are here in bold, they only address the shareholders. They don't address any other stakeholder in what has to be one of the most demeaning jobs. I think month after month we hear about miners going down in tunnels and being buried, and we don't get to see the outcome of that in the shiny bling bling reports here. And I think that there needs to be a way for there to be a kind of accountability for both, and for there to be profit, but at the same time accountability for what we're saying are the wider stakeholders. Now, just looking at this one word, growth, we can see that the stakeholder framework is about sustainability. It's about saying, well, what's more than just profit? Now, if you want to do further reading on this, I'd like to point you to Naomi Klein. We've looked at her work before, and we shall look at it again. And in the excerpt that we will be looking at from This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate, she talks about this veneration of growth, the idea that the trickle-down effect, that if we cut taxes for the wealthy, then they will invest in businesses which will in turn produce both goods, services, and jobs for the people. Well, we find out with the expansion of wealth and equality that that's not the case, that wealth are getting wealthier and the middle class is not only getting squeezed, but even poverty is expanding in many parts of the wealth and developing world. And so Naomi Klein warns us. Veneration of the profit motive has infiltrated virtually every government on the planet, every major media organization, every university, our very souls. So she's asking us on a personal level to question how much does materialism and just buying and buying and buying stuff feed into the overall narrative that nothing matters, we're helpless, we can't do anything but shop. And the book makes a very compelling argument for links between the two. What we're asking you to do in this class is first define that in the business context, and then also link that to personal and interpersonal behavior, because we are looking for you to be change makers.